Hey everyone, Bruce Eckfeldt here. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Make sure that you subscribe and turn on notifications so we can let you know when the next video is posted. You can also check us out at eckfeldt.com for more great content. With that, let's go check out the video.
Are you a CEO looking to scale your company faster and easier? Check out Thrive Roundtable. Thrive combines a moderated peer group mastermind, expert one-on-one coaching, access to proven growth tools, and a 24/7 support community. Created by Inc. award-winning CEO and certified scaling up business coach Bruce Eckfeldt, Thrive will help you grow your business more quickly and with less drama. For details on the program, visit eckfeldt.com/thrive. That's eckfeldt.com/thrive.
You're listening to Thinking Outside the Bud, where we speak with entrepreneurs, investors, thought leaders, researchers, advocates, and policymakers who are finding new and exciting ways for cannabis to positively impact business, society, and culture. And now, here is your host, business coach, Bruce Eckfeldt.
Welcome, everyone. This is Thinking Outside the Bud. I'm Bruce Eckfeldt. I'm your host. Our guest today is Eric Meth, who is founder and CEO of Good Harvest Company. And we're going to talk a little bit about his experience in consumer packaging goods and retail and how he's gotten into the cannabis space. Excited for this. I think this is the whole kind of branding, marketing. How do you find customers? How do you develop audience is critical right now in this kind of growing, no pun intended, cannabis industry. So, Eric, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Bruce. I appreciate you having me on the podcast. Excited to jump in.
Yeah. Well, let's do that. I always like to start with guests just kind of giving a sense of their professional background, and then, we can talk about how you pivoted into how and why you pivoted into cannabis. But what was your professional background? Tell me more about your marketing and expertise there.
Sure. So overall, I've been involved with consumer packaged goods and retail marketing for about 25 years. Early on, it was very print focused, worked with the division of News Corp focused on literally Sunday newspaper coupon inserts, which also was tied into in-store. So all the experiences I've had since then have always weaved in this consumer packaged goods, CPG, fast-moving consumer goods, FMCG, consumer electronics. It's always been sort of a woven in facet. I also looked at the digital media space relatively early, probably like mid-90s, not to date myself. But everyone else thought it was a fad. We don't think this is going to last. Stick with print. Print will live on forever. We know how that rolled out. So between the last organization I was with, I've always found myself as a business lead, a business development lead, touched a little product within the course of that work history. But I've always been responsible for building up divisions within these larger organizations. I've had experience with startups as well. But it got to the point, particularly with my last company, which was very involved with very large retailers, where we were touching a lot of data coming from the shopping and the buying behavioral side. And I was also very tied in with a lot of the ad tech companies between demand side platforms, supply side platforms, data management platforms, everything that was like the connective tissue for major brands to more effectively buy media. That's what our group did. So as I looked, we had some changes of control. Company was acquired. I naturally started looking at something else for a variety of reasons, but cannabis was something that was of personal interest as a consumer. From a business standpoint, I had a decent amount of personal investment. I looked more into the companies, the stocks I was buying, and the consumer experience. There was just far too many parallels that I couldn't avoid between CPG and retail. And as I started peeling back the onion a little bit more, it just became more apparent that what I'm doing now and what we're building at Good Harvest is very apt and needed in the marketplace, which we can get into.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, and just maybe explain a little bit for some of the folks that aren't as familiar with the marketing background. I mean, marketing went through this whole kind of transformation of, we'll push out advertisements and we'll, put things in papers and then we'll just, we'll see if people show up. And like it was this very kind of, we're going to push out in the world. And over the last, decade, 2 decades, this stuff has become much more technical.
Sure.
What are some of the things that marketing has really been able to do in terms of being more sophisticated about, customers and audience and demand and triggers it? Like, give us a sense of what you've been learning in this space that you're now applying to the cannabis world.
Yeah, great question. So in general, the market has become more adept from everything to customer retargeting. So most consumers, depending on what you like, if you're avid golfer, you tend to see a lot of golf ads online. A lot of those golf ads are sent to you, your specific mobile device or your desktop, wherever you're viewing, your OTT, your television. It's all based on how you conduct yourself online. What do you do? Places you go, sites that you visit. You might look at the Masters, you might go to ESPN and you're digesting a lot of golf content. You're going to golf retailers and looking at ping drivers. You're going to get ads for those things. The main way that's being done is through general retargeting. So pixels, cookies, which some are familiar with, are dropped on your machine. And that's how they're basically saying you're interested in this product because you've taken this action X amount of times. The more the industry started grabbing towards this notion of what's called programmatic media, automated media. Think of it as the stock exchange. Instead of stocks being traded on a marketplace, it's digital, mobile, video inventory, native inventory that's put there by publishers who are looking to find ways to sell. Sales teams that'll go out, but what they don't sell, most of their sell-through rates are 50% or so. They're putting in these marketplaces to expand the reach of qualified buyers who might be interested in purchasing that online inventory, that digital inventory. And that's really the ecosystem that I was leveraging with my last role. We built a business pretty handily with a very good team on the operations side to $175 million over the course of 5 years, which I don't take full credit for at all. I had a very good team. Some luck, the timing, but again, the harvesting of the data was really focused on specifically shopping and buying behaviors. Yeah. Some of these large retailers, just think any big box retailer, my former company, worked with, and we created a very non-obvious monetization channel for them. Things that they weren't making money off of and certainly not making any close margin by selling products. They're making fractional margins off of all those products and doing all the marketing and all the overhead. This was a completely unscheduled revenue line for them. Yeah. We were serving up at virtually 100. Think about it. If we can leverage a consumer who didn't buy anything, but they could still make money off of them by serving an ad to them, that was kind of the no-brainer pitch that we went into. So I took a page from that, and as I looked at the cannabis space, there is a dearth of data, not specifically for media activation and marketing activation. There's a lot of data in the market. There's point of sale systems that harness data. There's CRM platforms that harness data. But the connection point to take that rich data specifically tied to how consumers shop for cannabis products, ultimately purchase cannabis products, research cannabis products on brand sites, that's the connection point that I didn't see. So this was a year plus ago, MJ BizCon in 2017, when it was merely 16,000 people. Which is the
27, yeah, exactly.
That hit this year, which is so interesting going from one year to the next. I engaged a lot of brands and media companies and agencies and the ancillaries that were there and just really tried to figure out what that hole was. And it just kept coming back to the data side. So flew home, wrote a business plan, and quit my nice cushy job and started raising capital, and here we are.
Yeah, excellent. And was this really a moment in the cannabis space? I mean, a year before that, it wasn't ready, and a year from now, things would be too far along. I mean, how much do you feel like this is timing for cannabis?
Timing is, as I say, timing is everything. I think, an advisor of mine who comes from the data space pretty much had this idea when we first engaged and first met. I just saw this big smile go on his face because he's like, that's the idea I had like 4 years ago, and it was way too early. Yeah. But you're ripe for it now. Yeah. And look, I think there's still, within cannabis, everything is slow. When I look at where things are, it's rapidly catching up, but particularly from an advertising technology standpoint, we're a good 10 or so years behind where the traditional advertising space is right now, the ad tech space. I see this as, and I believe it, I'm a very small fish in a rapidly growing pond. But this is what also helped transcend me into this. This is what I know. This is what I've done. This is how I've applied myself from a professional standpoint. And when people ask about getting into the cannabis space, I say the same thing, like take what you know that you're doing really well and apply it that way. Don't do something completely unrelated.
Well, everyone wants to open a grow or something like unless you're an expert farmer and agricultural scientist. Probably not the best movement. Yeah,
exactly. No, I'm in Jersey, and there's plenty of basil farmers that are in Jersey that probably can apply that skill set and become a cannabis cultivator, but not someone who had a side grow when they were in college or high school. Like, I'm going to run a cannabis dispensary. So anyway, that's what drove me into the space and seeing this need to make this connection. So I think there are things that are happening at a more rapid pace in some levels, but I also feel that there's things that are just crawling along that need to be expedited, and I feel that this is one of them.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about sort of the customers that you're serving, the services that you're providing them. Like, who are you targeting in terms of helping them with the sort of technologies, and what are the actual engagements or the services look like right now, given where the industry is?
Yep. So the main customers that we're ultimately serving, it's twofold. There's the retail side, and then there's the brand side. And the brand side could also extend into what we'll call non-endemics, non-cannabis brands that might want to reach cannabis consumers. But the retailers who are, in some cases, doing things really well, utilizing customer relationship management platforms that are in the market between Baker, Springbig, et cetera, or their own POS systems that have these organic capabilities built in, that don't need that integration. They're communicating to their known audiences in that regard. And they should continue doing that. Some are doing it better than others, depending on how robust of a loyalty program they've established. They might have 50% of their overall customer base engaged with their loyalty program. A lot of it depends on the incentives and the benefits that they're extending. If it's not that great a program, they might see 15% of their overall. So there's an active base of consumers that they know what they're purchasing, how they're purchasing, at what frequency, and they're using SMS messaging and emails to influence increase in purchase for those specific types of products that they're typically engaged with and purchasing already. The part that's missing is, particularly when you have more dense areas, mature markets, mature DMAs, the total addressable market that most of these retailers are reaching is small in comparison to the whole. 10, 15%, high concentrated areas, there might be 100 retailers in that area. We're specifically focused right now on adult use markets. Okay. And then you have a market like Massachusetts, which just, I think, launched their 4th adult use retailer after a very long 3-year wait.
Painful.
Painful. Yeah. But I mean, 9.3 million, I think, was the first month's sales figures off the first 2. Yeah. Not a ton of demand issues there, right? Yeah. There's enough supply, there's greater demand, not a whole lot of need for advertising. But when we look at a mature market between Colorado, large scale markets like California, other mature markets that have been around Washington, Oregon, this is where the retailers need to find ways to communicate into other apt consumers, ideal consumers that are displaying the same behaviors. Mm-hmm. This is where a product like ours would come in. So we could provide a more scalable way to reach other, and I hate to call them lookalikes. I tend to think of them more as shop-like consumers, because what you do online from a general browsing behavior standpoint doesn't necessarily define that you're interested in those products. When you're physically shopping and you're going through that higher funnel process of the shopping experience, down to that mid funnel, down to that low funnel where you're ready to make that purchase, those are really the main intent signals that we're going after. Some of it is open market data that's available, and we also want to adhere to a lot of the regulatory requirements as the laws are written for specific marketing purposes. Yeah. You can obviously do outdoor, digital out of home, billboards, newspaper, magazine, et cetera. When it comes to digital, and I'm sure others on guests of yours have said the same thing, it's well known that I call them the big 5, the Microsofts, the Amazons, Google, Facebook, Apple, not touching this. Yeah. And I challenge how long it'll be until they decide to touch it.
Do you have a sense? I mean, because it seems like the pressure is mounting, or whatever. The pressure is unmounting in terms of to do it or not do it. Do you think they're going to turn, or do you think they're going to start allowing some of these things? And if so, when?
I think they'll tread water very gradually. Yeah. I get asked this a lot also from an investor standpoint. What happens when Google jumps in? You're wiped out. Yeah. Not necessarily. If you look at the track record so far, they're not touching a lot of categories that are legal. When you think about it, they're not touching pornography. They're not touching firearms. They're not touching gambling. They're not touching cryptocurrency. So even when you're looking at federal legalization, or at least some regulatory and legislative initiatives that are in place, like the States Act, which might make it easier for them to bank and not have that sensitivity of taking ad dollars coming from a cannabis business and illicit business. It's at the federal level. I still challenge. I personally think whether or not we have an administration change plus another midterm cycle, I'm betting 4 years along with more states. We go from 10 adult use states to 30. Yeah. I think the game changes, and everything else that's tied in with if our new pending AG gets confirmed, what his stance is.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of unforeseens, but I do think it's going to allow for smaller players to kind of pave the way. And the other historical that I've been exposed to, when I look at data management platforms specifically, they've had very nice being able to tap into that data side. And despite the fact that big ad tech player can simply come in, replicate what you're doing, hopefully you have some level of IP attached to it, they also look at the amount of expertise, whether it's an acqui-hire plus some technology or some type of IP acquisition. It's really the knowledge that you're bringing with the team that you've assembled, and the depth of relationships that you have, where it just makes it that much easier for them to say, great, we're going to just take it and we'll structure you on an earn out like they always do. Mm-hmm. But that's where I think they are more likely to go, find the right companies that have done it well and pave the path.
Yeah, absorb them. Yeah, absorb them. Yeah, I think that, and I think I see that happening with lots of different facets of this industry, where because of the federal legislation, the big players are not coming into it, so it creates this kind of vacuum that you can enter. You can take the expertise, start something, get some traction, and then either make good money between now and when they kind of come in, and then hopefully set yourself up for being easier to acquire than to compete against. So I think that's happening in several areas.
Yeah. So the retailer is one side, and then the other side that you're asking is obviously the brand. So connecting the brands to the retailers where they're ultimately looking to sell and distribute their products is the other end. So the retailers I think of them as like the fuel who's providing the data. We've built a pump that's extracting the rich elements out of that data and kind of refining it. And the end user of the data ultimately could be the retailer as well. So there's benefits for them contributing data in. They can extract data out. And essentially, the way we're structuring it is it's for free. They have to buy the media that's attached to the data. But we're trying to do this thing really well, create an effective data management platform that allows brands, both inside and outside the cannabis space, to effectively reach consumers specifically around those buying and shopping signals that they're giving off, and not doing it in a way that exposes any personal information, because we understand there's certainly sensitivities. Some people don't want to give CVS or Walgreens their information, so they're not going to sign on to their loyalty program. But I think as you see markets mature, that those elements start to sort of winnow away, where people become more comfortable and they want value. So if I can get 20% off or a first crack at this new product that comes in, sure, you're creating a value for me. I'll exchange some information, but not too much information.
Yeah. Well, information that is reasonable. It's reasonable based on what you're going to give me in terms of value. So can you give me a case of an example, either real or kind of a hypothetical, in terms of the type of brand that might be interested in something like this? Because I think there's lots of these kind of cannabis brands, but I think what's interesting is a lot of these brands that are kind of coming into the space that are ancillary or kind of related, that are looking to enter or looking to participate in some way.
Yeah, I think the obvious ones are the endemics, the cannabis brands. I see the opportunity, and this is another part of my prior background, the whole notion of shopper marketing. In this case, I'm looking at it as cannabis shopper marketing, where a brand is wanting to get distribution in a specific set of retailers. So they're working with a multi-state operator, an MSO, and in the sort of standard retail world, food, drug, mass classes of trade, retailers like money, especially money coming from brands. And that's a lot of the behind the scenes that goes on, is in order to get that shelf space that's right in front of your eyes versus the one that's down by your knees, those brands are paying money to the retailer to get that shelf space. They're also doing localized promotions within that specific market. So you have the national brand dollars that are sort of giving sort of top level support from a marketing standpoint, top level air cover. They're running ads on national television. It could be, P&G or Unilever. Yeah. But then at the localized level, you've got the specific account reps who are dealing in very specific DMAs, just looking to sell more product at Walmart or just looking to sell more product at CVS. There's a coupling of dollars that happens there. So they're getting air cover from a national standpoint. Obviously, with cannabis, you're looking at regional or state level. Yeah. But I think the same applies. If we can combine and make some incentives happen where we can take data that we're gleaning from individual markets, a brand can utilize that data and maybe even partner with the retailer, whether they're doing a 50-50 split on the marketing around it, they're sharing costs, but the whole goal is don't go to this retailer, go to this retailer.
Yeah.
Wanna Brands can utilize, let's just say, Green Dragon in the Denver area and really have an impact on that consumer. And if the retailer is doing their job well and the product specialists or bud tenders are doing their job well, while they're picking up that advertised product, they're also upselling them 3 other things when they're in the store. So I think there's an opening for that, which obviously helps to amortize the spends that are happening. And then it also helps circumvent some of these challenges, because what I find talking to brands, most are looking at the available options that are in the market that don't really have that data layer. I think it's becoming more apparent. I think the data is becoming better, but it still has a ways to go. So instead of the scattershot advertising that exists right now, they have a more definitive way to reach those end consumers against all those buying signals that I went through.
Yeah. In terms of sort of the data insights that you're able to actually gather in this in the cannabis space here, what are the things that what are the sources that you're kind of pulling, or what's the raw data you're doing, and then what are the insights you're able to develop once you have that data in place?
Yeah, it's a good question. So at first, we're going very macro, so call them like mega segments. The way that we've built at least the first version, the minimum viable product, the MVP version of Good Harvest, is built to get more definitive. So if we're looking at tracking a consumer as they come to a cannabis retail site or a brand site, depending on what they're selling, if they're selling cartridges or they're selling edibles, we can bucket them into the edibles category or the concentrates category or the flower category. Now, currently, particularly from a scale standpoint, we just want to know cannabis consumer.
Yeah, exactly.
In this market.
Yeah. So geography and interested. Yeah.
Interested and adult. So much like an alcoholic beverage company would have to adhere to legal drinking age, LDA compliance. Those are pretty much the main elements. So there's some existing open market data that's available that can focus on the mobile ad ID. So the non-personally identifiable, but the device identifiable piece of information that would allow a brand to retarget against that set of consumers in that DMA, in that geography, and an adult. Those are really the 2 main things. And then we're layering on, this is where our side comes in, we're enriching that open market data with additional signals that are coming from at least a first selection of partners that we're starting to work with, where we can glean that additional shopping intent behavior, and then ultimately that buying behavior. Where it becomes interesting, and this is more of a downwind opportunity, creating predictive analytics against why consumers shop certain categories but don't convert.
Yeah.
How can we identify trends? And certainly there's a lot of good companies between Headset, New Frontier Data, BDS Analytics. They're helping brands identify who their core shoppers are, and they're gleaning and pulling POS data out of a number of the systems. Headset's obviously doing a deeper job of that and providing subscription services on the brand and the retailer side to help them with inventory forecasting and distribution. But again, the what next part isn't there. How do you take that rich data that says these consumers buy more of this product in this market? Okay, now what? How do I connect that consumer vis-a-vis media and send advertising to them?
Yeah.
So when they do go into the store, they're asking for that product. The other side of the analytics end, I see that as a measurement component. So as we develop, much like I used to use IRI and Nielsen when we ran a campaign, we can narrow it down to that specific. If it was a national campaign or a regional campaign, we would be able to go to a third party. As much as we can score it ourselves, we can work with the retailer directly, show these individuals were exposed to an ad, these weren't, control and test sets. And this is what the net impact was. This is what the net sales effect was. Did that net sales effect create a return on ad spend? Great. You're also grading your own homework. So there's a lot of folks have some issues with that. So that's why we would use a company like IRI or Nielsen. I think that's where some discussions that I've had with some of these potential partners, that's where I see them adding another layer of value. So we can measure these things, make sure it works, make sure the ad spend works. So you see another ad spend happen the next time they want to promote. So it's a catalytic effect, but it's needed. And I think as more brands, and you asked earlier about non-endemic brands, that's what they want.
Yeah.
They expect that. They're coming a career in. They're not even going to look at it if they can't measure it.
Yeah.
So in order to be able to draw those dollars, which essentially are going to be much larger than any individual cannabis brand or MSO or retailer would be able to put together right now, with exception, MedBen, $4 million annual ad budget running billboards everywhere, which is great. They're doing a lot of good things. They're changing the stigma, educating consumers, all that's needed. But not many cannabis brands have $4 million annual ad budgets.
Yeah, well, not yet.
So as you find more non-endemic brands, not yet. This is where we can use a system like this, data that's farmed and analytics, and most importantly, measurement on the end. Yeah, I think some of it's like Wi-Fi on one of our ends.
Yeah, I'm on my 5G. I should be good, but they never know. You never know what happens.
Yeah.
So let's just pick it back up on the going the other brands as the bigger brands really want to kind of get into the space, and why all this stuff becomes really important as this industry grows. All right, so why do these bigger brands why do the brands really care about this stuff, particularly the ones that are not cannabis specific?
Yeah, so I look at an example, Totino's, the famous Totino's pizza rolls. They ran a campaign last April, 420. They canvassed the entire Denver DMA with billboards and other outdoor with a very specific creative, better when baked. In the Denver market, Totino's pizza rolls. That was canvassed all over the place.
Yeah.
And really well executed. It was a great use of the medium, the channel distribution, using outdoor because it was obviously targeting a very mature market like the Denver DMA. There was no other continuity beyond that. There was no attachment to a mobile campaign. There was no attachment to a desktop campaign, a video campaign. Mostly because, again, the average consumer, granted, yes, it's a mature market. People are used to and they understand what 420 is. Yeah. But to be able to enhance that even more and continue the conversation, encourage more purchase of Totino pizza rolls around the largest cannabis holiday, that didn't exist, right? There was no other way to do that with any general scale factor. So the billboards were great and they essentially got the message across. But then I see that also extending if you're looking at ride sharing services like Uber and Lyft. You want to understand location of consumers as much as they want to curb any kind of drug driving, much as they want to curb drunk driving. These are all other apt uses of attracting a cannabis audience and identifying a cannabis audience specifically with a very consumer-specific message that resonates with that audience versus a general audience. So I see more of that, and you can extend that into fast food. You could extend that into other types of consumable products, snack foods, et cetera. So yeah, I think that's where there's other applications that, again, allow us to tap into some larger budgets which might exist that want to reach that, but they'll also want the types of measurement and the types of reach and the types of data targeting that they're used to when they run traditional campaigns.
Yeah, and I think I'd like this supports, I think, what's happening in the industry, which is, as we move from this kind of, serving the existing pot culture and moving to kind of more, this multifaceted general population, with different uses, different intentions, different kind of attributes, and we start moving into these bigger brands and stuff. Like getting more sophisticated around this is going to be key, and it's just going to grow over the next 5-10 years.
It's critical. I mean, because we all see it. We're seeing it now with obviously brands that are coming in from outside related to Constellation brands and their heavy investment in Canopy, Altria, and their heavy investment in Juul and Kronos. These are happening, and you're going to find more health and beauty manufacturers like Revlon coming in and utilizing CBD infused beauty products and makeup products. So much like there's different classifications of CPG consumers between luxury-oriented consumers, budget brand consumers, mainstream consumers, you're going to need better data and better analytics and targeting to reach those specific subsets of those types of consumers. And again, it's just dovetailing into what they're doing consistently now and what they've been doing for dozens and dozens of years.
Yeah. So we're going to hit time here. Great conversation. I think we could probably go on for a while on this one, and maybe we do another episode later to get into some of the details. But I think it's a great conversation around kind of the more sophisticated aspect of this industry, and what we're really going to see more of in the coming years. People want to find out more about you, about Good Harvest. What's the best way to get more information?
Sure. So we are available to digest all of our information at goodharvest.co. If anyone wants to reach me directly, whether it's for more information as we're getting our beta put together, as we're drawing in more brand and retailer interest, or also investment, which we're still working on, you can reach me directly at ejm@goodharvest.co.
Great. I'll make sure both the link and the email address are in the show notes. Eric, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time. It's been a fascinating conversation.
Thank you, Bruce. I was glad to be part of it. And I'm an avid listener, and I'm looking forward to hearing my own wonderful voice in this wonderful conversation as much as I've enjoyed the other batch of content that you've been producing over the past couple months.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You've been listening to Thinking Outside the Bud with business coach Bruce Eckfeldt. To find a full list of podcast episodes, download the tools and worksheets, and access other great content, visit the website at thinkingoutsidethebud.com. And don't forget to sign up for the free newsletter at thinkingoutsidethebud.com/newsletter.